Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Captain Pilot Knight speaking, and I'd like to welcome you aboard today's tour of the Abernathy Farms building yard. We're expecting a smooth ride today with a flight time of about 20 minutes. Now we want to thank you for flying with us today and invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Abernathy Farms Construction Yard. This is where we build all of the prefabs that we use to rebuild the Commonwealth. It was established by the Minutemen and is run by the Abernathys themselves. They are the only permanent residents of the farms. Our workers come in on two week on, 2 week off shifts. So we've got several groups of workers that come in, and we're in between shifts, as it were, right now. So we've got a calmer workshop. It's not quite the hive of activity that it normally is. The farms themselves are composed of three main areas. We have the workshop and warehouse in the back. Here in the middle, or small yard as I call it, we have the office and canteen and barracks for our workers. And then down in the main yard, we've got the area where we do a lot of our assembly. And we'll get down to that pretty soon, and stick around because I've got a couple of pretty cool treats that I'm excited to show you guys. We'll start off here in the office. As you can see, I used the neon lettering and weapon board technique. It's a technique I learned in the No-Mod shop class, and I absolutely love it. It gives me a nice flat surface that I can put the letters on, which is great for these native structures. Over here, we have a little alfresco waiting area, and I'm not a big fan of the trash, so I threw down some floor tiles, covered up the holes with the rubber mats, and it worked out really well. The rubber mats left a sizable gap, and so I just rug glitched in a couple of boxes there. I wanted to say, until I watched the No-Mod shop class, I did not know any of the glitches. I didn't know the rug glitch, I didn't know the wire glitch or the pillar glitch, and those techniques, those tools really kind of revolutionized how I build in Fallout 4, and it's made building so much more enjoyable. As we come on in here to the office, we can see we're in the main reception area. We've got Lucy Abernathy over there manning the reception's desk. Back over here to the left, I just threw in a small restroom for our customers. And again, using the pillar technique to push these half walls in, gave me a nice confined area that felt a little bit more private. We'll head back down to the back, and here in the rear of the office, we've got this little just kind of rest area for the Abernathys themselves. Mr. Abernathy taking a seat, hanging out. So here I've got a couple of these cabinets that I rug glitched in, and I didn't want to use them as cabinets, but rather as a wall. So I saw this technique, I saw Paul use this technique a couple of times, and I just love it. It fleshes out the wall in these end cap pieces, and it allows me to attach the signs. It gives me a nice flat surface, and it's a technique that I use quite a lot, actually. As we swing over here, we've got the blueprint and records room. This is where you come and meet with the Abernathys to discuss plans and make sure everything's getting assembled and built the way that you like it. We'll head upstairs real quick, which is where we have all of the majority of our power generators and a lot of our turrets to keep the farms themselves safe. You can see we've got some machine gun turrets over there. We'll spin around here. A couple more machine gun turrets up there. One thing I did want to say is, as I kind of developed my own building language in the game, I did not like exposed wires, which, not knowing the wire glitch technique, led to some pretty difficult situations. But I feel like in these native structures, these structures that were already in the game, it somehow feels appropriate to have these exposed wires. So you can see all around this room, I've just got exposed wires and exposed conduit, and it feels right. It feels like it fits in. It makes sense in this kind of vintage wasteland structure. I myself prefer cleaner lines, and so I've developed a couple of different techniques to clean up my wires and keep them out of sight. As we head up here, this is the Abernathy's personal apartment. Just a small galley-style kitchen, little dinette set. Run upstairs real quick. We've got the Abernathy sleeping quarters. Some more baby animal paintings there on the wall. Simple artwork, and then just a toilet for the Abernathys up here in their personal space. This is just a small space that allows them a respite from the daily grind of building and working with so many different folks. We'll head around to the back, and I'll show you guys the warehouse and the workshop. So as we come around, I'm sure some of you have noticed I've got a bunch of conduits on the roof up there. That's the technique that I used before I learned the true wire glitch technique. It works, it gives great coverage. It is expensive, but if you put those vertical conduits up and down, or excuse me, on the roof, and then run the wires between them, you don't get red wires. It will connect. We're going to pop the switch here on the door and head on into the warehouse. And here it is, guys. This is where we keep a lot of our prefabs that we're going to ship out or that we need a lot of. So over here we've got tons of wooden rails because we use lots of wooden rails, roof pieces, wall pieces. There's some floor pieces there in the back, stairs, just things that we're getting ready to ship out or we need a lot of. We're going to store them in here in the warehouse. And by the way, I love the warehouse tile set. I love these huge vaulted rooms that you can create with them. I love the amount of light that comes in through the windows. It's absolutely one of my most favorite tile sets. Got our rolling door over here, and yep, that's a logic gate, which I was terrified of until the no-mod shop class. I didn't like them. I didn't understand them. I was intimidated by them. And then once I learned how to use them from the no-mod shop class, now I use those double switch rolling doors all the time. So we come over here, we come into the main workshop area. You can see we've got several workstations set up over here. We've got our normal workbenches back around in the back. And then here I've got a couple of sets of construction power armor. In my headcanon, in my lore, taking or keeping the armor off of the frames allows the workers more dexterity when it comes to using tools or moving prefabs or whatever it may be. And so they need the dexterity in the arms to manipulate things in a fine manner. And so it makes sense to me in my head. We've got our main workstation here in the middle, which is common in a lot of workshops. You'll see a big singular workstation in the middle. And then here, another rolling door with the double switch on it. And it just works, and I love it. As we come out in here onto the main deck of the workshop, I've got my robot repair station or workstation over there. I use a lot of robot provisioners, so I like to keep those in each one of my settlements. And then over here, just a couple of scav stations. And that pretty much does it for the workshop. Each of the three areas of the construction yard are on their own electrical circuits. And I've got my switch wall down here. So I've got yellow for yellow S for the shop, SY for the small yard, and then a green M for the main yard. And then that WX is an abbreviation for weather in aviation. And that, you can see I can get those lights on and off using my switch. That is my clear weather shell. Before I do that, I wanted to point out this switch wall is a variation on the technique that we learned in the casino build in the UFO. I stuck my switches on the wall and then I just rug glitched one of those large metal cabinets into the wall until it lined up where I wanted it to line up. And I love the way that it turned out. It looks purposeful. It looks like it's supposed to be there. And I love the way that it turned out. We're fortunate that it's raining so that I can show you that our clear weather shell actually works. Now, I know we learned in one of the videos that you need to reset the timer on that delay off switch. That's default. I just plugged it in, wanted to see if it would work, and sure enough, it does. That's a technique I learned from the Nomad shop class, and I use it in all my settlements. Got the firework mortar here. Obviously, it's powered by this fusion generator that's sunk into the concrete, so it's protected from attack. Got our power back here. And then I'm using the True Wire glitch to run power to essential things across the construction yard itself. The office, the canteen and barracks, and the defense system in the main yard. Got a couple more prefabs over here. And then the farm. And I just took all the potato plants and moved them over so that I could open up this area so that I would have a nice flat area for setting up whatever it needed to be. It's a great staging area. Over there we've got our robot worker here at the farms. His name is Bob the Builder. I kind of thought that was appropriate. And then over here we've got the canteen and barracks. Again, using that warehouse tile set because I love the amount of space that I can create when I'm building with it. It's up on stilts because it did not matter what I did. I could not get Clarabelle to leave. It didn't matter if I moved her trough, if I added another trough, if I took the fencing down, it didn't matter. So I just decided that she could stay. I would just raise up the canteen and the barracks so that they would kind of cover her up and give her a nice little covered pen. Before we go into the canteen, I'm going to hit that gate there. I'm gonna wait and surprise you guys for once we get down to the main yard. Up here in the canteen, it's a simple space. Again, this isn't a permanent residence for the workers. So we've got a writing table and kind of a lounge area, simple open plan kitchen. Each meal is the responsibility of a different worker. So breakfast is one person, lunch is another person, dinner is another person, and I wanted to give them a nice kind of homey place to come and eat their meals and spend their downtime. So we got some pop culture art there on the walls and nice little dinettes. As we head upstairs into the barracks themselves, you can see each worker gets their own individual locker. Got Cappy hanging out, looking out. And then here are the barracks. Very simple, rather Spartan. But again, this is not a permanent residence. It's where people come and work for a few weeks and then they go home to their family. So everybody gets their own bed, they get their own foot locker and a personal lamp, but that's about it. As we swing back around here, we'll head into the bathroom, and we've got a great view of downtown Concord and just a simple bathroom. It's a shared space, but you know, there's not a lot that they need because again, this isn't their home and they bring whatever toiletries they need with them. So we're going to head back downstairs and then down into the main yard. And guys, I'm really excited about going down into the main yard. I've got a couple of pieces down there that I'm really happy with. One which inspired this entire build, and another which I think complements the yard, but really wasn't possible without the lessons I learned in the Nomad shop class. Going to shut that door real quick. But before we head inside, I wanted to point out I hated the junk fence. I despised it. It didn't snap. It didn't sink. It left huge gaps. And until I learned from the Nomad shop class how to put that together, I never used it. But now I love it. I love the aesthetic. I love that I can make a continuous wall. It fits so perfectly in this build, and I honestly I could not have done this settlement without the junk fence, and so I'm really glad that Paul taught us how to use this in a way that works. All right, well, we're here at the main yard. We'll open the door and head on in. So the main building yard consists of two separate levels. You have the upper level, And it looks like we're getting ready to put 2 pieces of these metal prefabs together to get ready to get shipped out. And we do that here on the upper level by using our small crane. Now, guys, I am so happy with how this turned out. And I'm sure there are going to be people out there that say, "Oh, it doesn't look like a crane and it looks terrible and what were you thinking?" But I honestly, I don't care. For the first time in Fallout 4, I had a vision of something that wasn't pre-existing, and I finally had the tools to put it together. I'd seen some amazing builds on YouTube, and I always thought, how do they do that? How do they do that? And finally, I had the tools to actually do something that I had as a vision in my head. I'm so happy with how it turned out. And for me, honestly, the biggest test was when I asked my 4-year-old what he thought it looked like, and he said a crane, and it just chuffed me to bits. It took a while to do this, but I had the vision in my head that I wanted this sort of crane, and it started coming together, and I picked pieces because of a shape, and I figured out how to get it in, and it worked, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. You can see in our operator's cab up there, we've got our switches to control the movement. This crane, like most other things, has its own power supply. So if we jump up here, you can see it's got its own generator here in the back. One other thing I wanted to point out, we'll hit those again so we can get all the lights on. One other thing I wanted to point it out, and I'm sure that this has happened for a lot of builders in Fallout 4, but as I was constructing the rear here, I put down these conduits and then obviously ran them up to simulate a pulley system, and then pushed this cabinet in just to create the winding box. And when I was doing that, I was doing it from the other side, and I didn't realize that I had left these series of bolts out. And I'm so happy that happened. It was one of those brilliant kind of serendipitous moments that I'm sure a lot of us who build in Fallout 4 a lot have had, and I was tickled to death with it. I loved how it turned out, and I loved that little detail wound up kind of just coming organically out of the build. I'm so happy with how the crane turned out. It really, I tinkered and I toyed and I poked and I prodded, and it's just about exactly like I want it. I finally had to step away and say I don't think there's anything else that I can do with it. It's as good as it's going to be, and it's exactly what I wanted. Now, before we head down and I show you the structure that inspired this entire build, I did want to point out I've got the junk fence running all the way around. The switch that you saw on the switch wall controls the lights. The missile turrets, however, are on their own dedicated system. They're powered by that fusion generator, so it's much more difficult to take them down. And again, you can see the junk fence. And then these pillars I just created using the concrete small floor, which I snapped onto a big wall and then removed the wall and then put the pillar in. And it made for a great little tower that I've used since then when it's appropriate. But that's enough for that. Let's take a look at the reason why we're here, why I created this. As we head down this ramp to the lower deck, I did want to show you this little vignette, putting together a couple of prefabs, and this allows us to get into position so that I can show you what inspired this entire settlement build, and that is this guy. This large armed crane is the third or fourth iteration of this crane that I have built. But every time before this, it was always the wooden shack floor with the concrete foundation for the main pillar and wood arms, and it didn't feel right. It felt heavy and static, and this is so much closer to what I actually envisioned when I started building these types of cranes in my settlements. Oh, knocked my thing over. The main structure there, the main base, is scaffolding and pillars from the warehouse set, and it just gives it a great sense of lightness, of airiness, of portability. It feels modular, which is, I mean, what these cranes are in real life. You know, they're modular. They're built, and then they do their job, and then they're taken down. And that was something that I really wanted to go for with this. Simple way to float objects. Some of you may know, you just build up the floor and then stick the thing on top of it. In this case, it was one of these prefabs, and then take the floor away, and so you get the floating illusion. And then I just wired it up to make it look like the crane was taking the strain. We'll hop down here, and guys, this crane took days, is what it took. Just to get the scaffolding and pillars to line up took probably the better part of an hour and a half, but I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I love that the scaffolding clips into the pillars, and it gives a sense of rigidity. It gives a sense of strength. I'm really happy with how this whole thing turned out. As we head up here to the cab, we can take a better look at the boom, which again are just those metal floor tiles from the concrete tile set. The metal rails compose the sides there. I used the floor stacking technique to get them up as high as I wanted to match the rails, and then just ran it out as far as I thought it needed to be. We've got the operator's cab over here, and unlike the smaller crane, which is run using switches, this is computer controlled. So operator sits here and uses his terminal to make the crane do what he wants it to do. A couple more things I wanted to point out to you guys before we wrap it up. These conduits here all had to be rug glitched together. Just use the rugs to push them in, and then use the true wire glitch to run the rest of the wires down to these conduits. And I initially had just one wire, but it didn't translate. It didn't feel like it had the strength or the beef to hold a structure like this. So doubled up on several wires and then ran them back to these larger standing conduits, and I'm really happy with the effect. It takes a little bit of imagination, but I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I think that this is truly the iteration that I initially had when I started building these kinds of cranes. Got the counterbalance system there in the back, and I love that it's the rusted metal. I'm really happy with how this crane turned out. I'm really happy with how the rest of the construction yard turned out, especially my small crane down there. And all of that is due to the lessons that I learned in the No Mod Shop class. I have been a fan for a long time now, and I can't wait for more videos to learn even more techniques, because I'm not going to stop building, and I definitely don't want to stop learning. So we'll head down to the bottom, we'll finish up the tour, and that'll be it. Well, folks, thanks for joining me on this tour of the Abernathy Farms Construction Company building yard. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. And one more time, I know I've said it a bunch, but thank you so much to the No Mod Shop class for increasing the amount of tools in my toolbox when it comes to settlement building. It's really, the class has really given me a new kind of vim and fervor for building in Fallout 4. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and be on the lookout for more tours of Minutemen settlements with your captain, Pilot Knight.